Alright, guys, today I'm going to react to some shorts. Choose a short. I think I'll choose this one, yes.
If someone breaks your heart, can you actually sue them?
You like cheater! I'm taking you to court. For
What?
For the alienation of affection.
That's not a real
Dang.
Oh, it's very real. In 6 states, you can actually sue the person your spouse cheated with for breaking up your marriage. In 2010, a woman in North Carolina won $9 million suing her husband's mistress. $9 million?
That's right.
Okay, fine. But that's between her and the,
Uh,
other one. Not exactly. North Carolina also has something called breach of promise. It means if you
what?
promised to marry her and then broke it off, she can sue you for financial damages.
Like, I don't know, the $20,000 venue, the dress, the catering.
You're joking. Nope. A man was once ordered to pay $50,000
Yes.
for breaking off an engagement. But it gets even worse. Because in North Carolina, adultery is still illegal.
Good.
If found guilty, adultery can carry a sentence of up to 60 days in prison.
Is this for real?
That's
Yeah,
not
but it's
bad.
hardly ever enforced. Still, if I were you, I'd start running.
Run!
If someone
What's the dumbest rule your school has ever added? My school decided to add the most unhinged attendance rule in the history of public education. 5 absences and 0.2 points come straight off your GPA. 5 more after that, another 0.2. Just gone. Clipped right off the top like it was nothing. The board passed it, the teachers hated it, and none of that mattered because it was already done. The effect was immediate. Kids who hadn't shown up since October were suddenly in their seats at 7 a.m. looking confused by the lighting. Franklin, who had a 0.2 GPA to begin with, started arriving before the janitors. I asked him why he was there so early, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, I have to protect what I have left in case I get lucky. Franklin had a 0.2 GPA. He was protecting a 0.2 GPA. It wasn't even a real problem for me at first since my parents already ran a tight ship. But then Winter showed up and decided to commit a war crime against the entire school. Every hallway smelled like a hospital gift shop. Every classroom sounded like a coughing competition with no prize. Kids were showing up with fevers, with tissues stuffed up their sleeves, with that specific look in their eyes that said, I would be in bed right now if I had any other option. Anything short of a confirmed bubonic plague diagnosis, and these people were in their seats. I got hit with 2 respiratory viruses back to back. 2 different ones. Like my immune system put up a fight the first time and then just gave up and left. So I went to the principal's office, not to report anything, not for a disciplinary issue, just to beg him as a human being to drop the rule before the building became a biohazard. I walked in and stopped. This man was sitting behind his desk in a full hazmat suit, face shield, gloves, the entire setup, just sitting there in his office like nothing about that was unusual, staring at me through a plastic visor while I stood there visibly sick and slightly falling apart. I said, Sir, this rule is making everyone come in sick. He nodded slowly and said, I'm not about to let any of you get me sick. The man who created the rule that forced every sick student into the building had completely sealed himself off from the consequences. He was in a hazmat suit, in his own office, at his own school. I went home. I thought about it. And then I did something I'm not going to pretend was a good idea. I waited until right after school. I picked the lock on his car, climbed into the back seat, and pulled a jacket over myself so he wouldn't see me. He walked out of the building about 20 minutes later, took the hazmat suit off in the parking lot because he figured he was in the clear, got in, adjusted the mirror, reached for the ignition. I sat up, he screamed, and before he could say a single word, I coughed on him for a solid 10 seconds straight, not a little polite cough, a full, committed, deeply congested 10-second broadcast straight into that car. The attendance rule was lifted the next day. The principal was out sick for a week. What's the dumbest rule your school has ever...
My new stepdad wore his army uniform to Thanksgiving. I called the cops before dessert. When I walked in, Kenny was sitting at the head of the table in full army dress. My aunt grabbed my arm. He's a war hero. Kenny stood up and shook my hand. Good to finally meet you, son. My uncle handed him a beer. Tell Brandon about Kandahar. He just got back from his 3rd tour. He'd love to hear this. Kenny settled back with a humble smile. We were outside Kandahar when the ambush hit. My buddy went down, so I ran through enemy fire and dragged him back. That's how I earned this. He tapped the medal on his chest. My aunt had tears in her eyes. I cut into my turkey and looked at his ribbons. They were in the wrong order, and the badge above them was upside down. I got the Purple Heart when an explosion threw me 15 feet, shot shrapnel into my left leg. I woke up 3 days later in a field hospital, barely able to walk. I looked under the table. He was bouncing that same leg just fine. I set down my fork. Where were you stationed? Fort Jackson. What was your job? Infantry. 11 Bravo. Fort Jackson doesn't train infantry. What unit? 3rd Battalion, 75th Regiment. Mom beamed. He was a ranger. Isn't that incredible? I nodded. Where'd you do ranger school? Kenny took a long drink. Fort Benning. Toughest 8 weeks of my life. That base hasn't been called Benning in years. I pulled out my phone under the table and searched his name in the Stolen Valor database. He'd been reported in 3 states for faking military service. I waited until Mom brought out the pie and everyone had a slice. Kenny, your badge is upside down, and those ribbons can't be together. You learned that on day 1 of basic. He froze. Fort Jackson trains clerks and cooks. Infantry goes to Fort Moore, and that base hasn't been called Benning in years. I turned my phone around and showed the table. You've been reported in 3 states for stolen valor. Mom grabbed my phone, and her hands trembled as she read. Kenny looked around the table. I just wanted people to respect me. Mom stood up so hard her chair fell over. You wore that uniform to our wedding. My uncle grabbed Kenny's shoulder. Were you ever even in the military? Kenny stared at the floor. No, I walked around the table. Take it off. You didn't earn it. I picked up my phone and called the cops before dessert. My new stepdad.
I'm testing the most illegal spy tools to see if they actually work or not. First, a tool that lets you make a fast getaway.
It's called
Okay.
a Z-scooter, and it looks just like a strange propeller. But once you power it up, it will pull
And
you through the
like
water
and
like a spy
subscribe to
mission.
my video, please.
But will it work underwater? It runs for about an hour and only hits speeds up to 2.5 miles per hour. The only good thing about it is that it's silent. This next tool lets you climb walls without rope. I just push it against the wall, activate the seal, and it should work.
If you start with E4 and he mirrors you, you
Guys,
immediately
this is the
attack
end of
his
the video,
pawn
so
because
bye.